What is the most you have ever lost your temper? Several years ago, I punched a dog owner after they let their canine nearly savage a cat to death while I was out walking. I got the cat away in time and thankfully all it suffered was a shock, but afterwards I said, "Next time put it on a leash, there is a sign that says keep your dogs on leads." They responded with a sod off, so I punched them. They were in their late teens or early 20s. And just so surprised. Thankfully I had nothing on that could identify me and wasn't driving, so I just avoided that area for a while to make sure that Plod didn't give me any hassle, as I had no interest in being arrested for doing a public service. Builders working on the house opposite mine used to lean on my wall every day and have their lunch. I found multiple food wrappers most evenings in my front garden that they just dumped on the floor. Got home one Sunday and they were there again, on the phone leaning on my wall, so I went in round the back. Opened the window behind them and scared the shit out of them, then sent a picture to their boss of them doing it and asked him who's going to pay for the litter removal from my front garden because I'm not doing it for free. Didn't see them again after that. You should have just collected the litter and put it in the exhaust pipe of their van. Make sure to use a broom handle to get it right up there. Wouldn't want them to litter the same rubbish twice. Doing this if happens to me. Get the litter, put it in the van, then report them to the Environment Agency for unlicensed waste transfer.
Okay.
Litter bothers me. One of my old neighbors used to just throw cans of Monster into the road. One day I collected all their litter and stacked up against their front door. When they opened the door it all fell into their house. They called the police about it. Can honestly say I've never lost my temper and assaulted anyone though. If people start shit with me I'll stand my ground, I can handle myself. I've been assaulted a few times, 2 attempt murders into the bargain, and I've always defended myself but I'd never be the first to violence. Passive-aggressive litter stacking though is always on the table. 2 attempted murders? What the hell happened? He's just really annoying. Was early 20s when the first one happened. I had a very stupid friend at the time that decided to piss off some really fucked up people. I got caught in the crossfire, so to speak. Not literal crossfire. Second one was years later after I joined the police. Can't go into specifics about it. Some people just really don't want to be arrested. Stacked a load of Monster cans against someone's door. We had something similar. They were dumping their packets and uneaten good under the floorboards. I noticed a stink in the room they were working in. When they arrived next day I had removed more boards and freaked out at them about their disgusting habits and encouraging rats. They didn't do it again. Got on a megabus and the driver asked me, window or aisle? I said, window or you'll what? Left right, good night, cheeky cunt. I walked into B&Q the other week. Was looking in the wood aisle and some cunt in an orange apron walks up to me and asks if I want decking. Unfortunately for him I swung first. Bits of my breakfast just got snorted out of my nose. Left right, good night rolling on the floor laughing. Not sure this will translate well but I'll try. Years ago, during a curfew, wartime, I got stopped by a policeman. I gave him my ID card, that's what they are for, and he proceeded to write down my personal description. Policeman, height? Me, 176. Policeman, hair? Me, brown. Eyes? Me, I have. Many years ago, 1998, when I was married to my ex-wife. She was assaulted by her sister's husband, who liked to use his fists on her too. So I went down to where they lived and confronted him. Why I did it I don't know, but when I was getting out of the car I saw my piece of chrome tubing, which I use for killing fish I caught that was going to be eaten. And I picked it up and hit him with it quite hard. I ended up in court and managed, luckily, to get away quite lightly. His son is currently in jail for beating up his, now ex-girlfriend and not for the first time. How the fuck did you end up in court? And he didn't? God knows, the police had the pleasure of telling that they had given him a warning, which I was not impressed with. I gave him a hairline fracture in his head and a broken arm. They were more pissed with me than him. Luckily, I had a great solicitor. The police were looking at GBH with intent then just did GBH. My solicitor persuaded them to drop it to ABH on the condition I pleaded guilty. In court the clerk stood up and said that the CPS had taken another look and decided to drop it to one of common assault. That seriously made my day. The other solicitor made me out to be a devil, but mine made me out an angel. I got away with a 2-year conditional discharge. No compo and no costs. I was pleading skin, but a week earlier I had won a darts comps and had 1,200 pounds, and was mentioned on Cornwall radio. So I prayed that they would not catch on to that, otherwise I would have lost it. That's the sort of tale you love hearing over a pint. Good outcome for you. Did a duty solicitor represent you? It was, but it is so long ago now that I don't think about it, till I saw this post.
Yeah.
I saw the duty solicitor. He was great to be honest. I was shocked when the magistrates came back in after talking and said I was having a 2-year conditional discharge and that they don't want to see me again. We moved up to North Wales shortly after, mainly to get away from the situation as it caused a lot of friction. I wouldn't stand a chance in any situation nowadays. I'm 61 and both knees are bone on bone, so all anyone has to do is push me and I'm on my ass. How the fuck did you end up in court? It doesn't matter what they've done, as long as they aren't doing it right now. It's thoroughly illegal to whack someone round the head with a bit of metal tube. He defo is not doing it now, they divorced many years ago. Sadly, one of his sons has taken after him and is doing time for beating up his ex-GF. He got 3 years, came out on license after 18 months and 2 nights later he was arrested for fighting and is now back inside. No, I should never have used that bar, but temper was risen and I didn't think straight. If I could turn the clock back and not use it I would. Thankfully there was no severe damage to him. It's thoroughly illegal to whack someone round the head with a bit of metal tube. When did this come in? Because he turned up at someone's house with a metal bar and twat them with it. Of course he ended up in court. Lucky not to end up in prison. Remember kids, that metal bar was actually a torch. A torch is for safety. Explained to me by a decent cop after I had an interaction with a burglar. It was one of my first times in a pub. I'd been drinking but I was only tipsy. This guy would not leave me alone. He was cornering me. I tried to tell him to back off and that I wasn't interested and he ended up nipping my arse. Normally I'd get shy or intimidated and walk away. But being full of beery bravado, I punched him square in the face instead, and ended up breaking my own wrist. As far as I can remember, he left me alone for the rest of the night. Next morning I woke up and my wrist was purple. I'd like to imagine his nose was the same. But being a more petite lady of 5 feet 0 inches and roughly 80 pounds, I doubt I made much of a difference. Edit. Spelling. Love this. Good for you. I think nowadays every woman should, unfortunately, learn how to throw a couple of punches. Great post by the honey badger. I got assaulted by a woman about your size when she was hammered. Completely blindsided me and was surprised by how much it hurt. Her little fists were like ice picks. Maybe my bony knuckles did cause some damage after all. Female sign. Privately, I'd had a bad day at work and was on my way home. Hopped on the bus and at the next stop some pissed up Torag gets on. Refuses to pay. Bus driver tells him he won't move the bus until he does. So obviously he just sits there swearing at the driver while a bus full of people twiddle their thumbs. So I got up, put my bag down, grabbed him and threw him off the bus. Quite hard. And he lands in a heap on the pavement. Whole bus cheers. Honestly, I've had enough of dealing with shit like that. So I just don't put up with it now. Career. I called out a director of the organization I was working for showing preferential treatment to a supplier that I knew he had a vested interest in, public sector organization, during a board meeting. I was junior to him and he basically told me to shut up and do what I was told. No member of the board stood up for me or backed me. I was so fucking angry I was shaking and could barely speak after I left. I ended up speaking to my director, who hadn't been in the meeting, and the next day had half a dozen apology emails from board members for how I'd been spoken to. We also shut down the director's involvement with the supplier and project in question, and made sure he wouldn't be in such a position again. Honestly, it was the sort of thing that would break a lot of people. Fortunately, I'm more of a get angry and get even sort of person. I hate when I get angry and start shaking. It makes me feel like a big wuss. It's just adrenaline. Nothing to be ashamed of. Don't worry, I cry when I'm angry. So embarrassing. With my toddler in home bargains. Another mom was absolutely laying into her son, looked about 8 or 9, whilst packing up their shopping, calling him a waste of space, a loser. She hated him, a brat, etc. He just stood there quiet, utterly defeated like he'd heard it every day of his life. People were glancing but generally ignoring. I am normally fairly quiet but I lost it. I told her she was vile and she should be ashamed. Told her all parents get stressed, but there is no excuse for what she was saying. She actually looked shocked for being called out. I then told the boy that when he gets older to leave and not look back, that he can choose to have good people around him. I thought it was about to be 2 mums squared up to each other, but she just walked out. He will always remember how you stood up for him. I hope he takes your advice. And it'll also let that young lad know that his mother's treatment of him is unacceptable and he shouldn't have to put up with it, and the mother will probably know that now and, hopefully, lay off him cause she knows he knows it's wrong. Or, unfortunately, she'll double down. How dare you shame me in public? I'm not saying you shouldn't intervene at all, but it can sometimes make things worse doing so, and you'll never know which is which. It might make things worse at home, but he'll know it was wrong. CPTSD doesn't come from the event. It comes from the response to the event. e.g. if no one ever tells you it's bad, or you deserve different. You can get mentally fucked up worse by psychological abuse that's ongoing with no recourse compared to physical abuse, but with a plan to get out and people on your side. If people step in, kids get to learn the world isn't all like his mom and there are good people out there. And then if it does get worse at home, he has that light in his head of mom shouldn't be doing this and might try telling someone versus this is normal. Thank you for doing that. I was that kid. I wish someone had helped the way you had. As a kid, you know that you're being treated badly, but you don't really know it's not normal, and you believe the things your parents say. For someone to step in and offer the perspective that it's not you, but the parent that's messed up helps so very much. Oh, good for you. Thank you. As a person who grew up in an abusive situation, he definitely will remember this forever. In years to come, your words may be the one thing that gives him strength to escape and build a happier, safer future. I think that's fair enough tbh. It seems silly now, but at the time I saw red. For a bit of context, this woman had 2 off-lead dogs that just pissed everyone off. To get to the countryside walks, you have to go through this park. It was quite small and kids go there to hang out or whatever. It could be unavoidable, but it makes the walk 10x as long. Plus I shouldn't have to walk somewhere else just because of this woman. This woman reminded me of some popular kids in the playground at school. If you and your dogs didn't fit the bill, you'd be terrorized to not walk through there. I wasn't going to let some 50-year-old woman bully me. She would allow her dogs to bark at mine. They were small enough to walk under my dog and it would stress her out. This woman would mimic me and laugh. She was a real piece of work, especially when she was with her friends. One day, I was walking through and sighed when I saw this woman with her dogs and her gang. They were all laughing with their dogs off lead, hassling mine and another man with his dog. This woman said, "Why are you always so rude?" I replied, "I'd rather be rude than a bitch like you. Do you just get off on terrorizing people? Why don't you just fuck off?" Her face was like thunder. I said, "Yeah." I said it. "Why don't you just get your dogs? Get your silly friends, grow the fuck up and fuck off." I walked off with my dog after they were shouting after me about how the younger generations are so rude. She'd report me, etc. Then I saw on Facebook about this incident. Majority of people said she was the issue and she needs to grow up. Around 3/4 months later, she stopped walking round there, or if she did, she was with her husband with their dogs on the lead. I'm not saying I was the one that stopped her or whatever. I just wanted her to control her dogs and stop being such a knob. I guess she expected the video to blow up and everyone be on her side. Even I was surprised. Also, I wanted to walk my dog in peace. It's early morning, just do one. It's so satisfying when someone posts on local Facebook expecting people to support them and instead get absolutely roasted by the rest of the community. Oh, so she filmed it? She didn't. Someone else did in her lil gang. Eventually, it was taken down by the moderators, I think they're called, on those community Facebook groups. The day my high school bullying ended, went through a bit of puberty turbulence. My voice started cracking. I felt infinitely powerful that day. I guess we're doing testosterone now. My bully started his usual routine and I picked him up and threw him at a wall. I similarly had a day when I stopped being bullied at school. There was a group of half a dozen boys who would bully me endlessly. One day after sports I was getting changed and a couple of them held me down while their leader started shoving a pair of skid-marked pants in my face. When they eventually let go and started walking away, I snapped. Realized my cricket kit was right by me. Picked up my bat, and absolutely smashed his knee. Full swing. Hit from the side, he crumpled like a sack of shit. He needed surgery. It was more than a year before he could walk without crutches, and the bullying stopped. This was my daughter. She had been getting bullied from the September she started year 11. I didn't know, she didn't tell us. Anyway, she went in one day and the main bully started again, so she punched her face in and my daughter got excluded from school 6 weeks before her XCs for it. This happened to me. I was around your daughter's age and a girl had been bullying me for months. One day Jay was really ill and this girl was on at me and I snapped. Apparently when I pushed her or whatever, she hurt her arm, the same one she'd been swinging at me straight after I'd pushed her, and so went to the hospital. Her arm was fine, but because she was the one hurt I got excluded. Not permanently, thankfully. I was absolutely fuming. "I'm sorry, the same thing happened to your daughter. Mine ended the same way. I took a punch in the face outside a lesson and instead of pretending it hadn't happened like usual, I decided enough is enough, put him in a headlock and slammed his head into a brick wall. Instantly knocked him out and blood everywhere. I panicked and thought I'd killed him. When teachers came and called him an ambulance, he pretended he had tripped because it was bad for his street cred to have been coded by me. So no consequences for myself, and he instantly went from cartoon school bully to a bit of a laughingstock. I love stories like this. Little bastards getting what they deserve. One of my school friends dealt with a bully in a similar way, both girls. One day she just had enough and slammed the girl's face into a stone desk. It was a science lab. I'm not sure what they're made of. Bullying stopped immediately. As someone who loves their cats very much. Good job. I was enjoying a nice peaceful afternoon when my ex flew through the back gate shouting for someone to call the police. He was being followed by a gang of young lads. Me, about 30, grabbed an iron weightlifting bar and went out to attack them. Let's just say there were a few bruised egos and bodies that day. A few weeks after, I went down to the local shop where a gang of lads stood on the pavement. As I approached, they parted like a biblical sea to let me through. When I was 10 in the early 80s, I lived on an estate where the kids of all ages ran around all day. One of our friends bought a new kid our age out to play one day. This kid started picking on my friend's 5-year-old sister. In the end, he punched her full fist in the face. I lost my shit. Rugby tackled him to the ground and then bent his fingers back until one of them broke. I heard later that he went home crying and then his dad bull-locked him not for punching a little girl in the face, but that he got beat up by a girl. Wonder where he got his attitude from. I didn't get in trouble for it, but I did nearly shit myself when I saw him on the first day of secondary school. He never came anywhere near me though. My wife and I had been to the beach with our toddler. We were packing up the car to leave. My wife was strapping the little one into her seat when a bloke on a motorbike went flying past her way too close. Then stopped, got off his bike and came back and started getting in her face and yelling at her that she had the door open too wide and he'd nearly clipped it. The fact that he was the one that didn't give her ample room on an otherwise empty road didn't seem to occur to him. He was scaring her and our daughter was screaming in terror. Anyway, I was crouched on the other side of the car sorting bags out and out of sight. I stood up and his face told me he hadn't seen me before he started his performance and he started to back away, so I came round the car and dragged him out of sight of the road by his crash helmet. Gave him a hiding while he wailed that he was sorry. Arsehole. In my mid-teens, I saw a teen boy from a few houses down trying to shoot our cat with a BB gun out of their back window. I marched down to their house and banged on the door for a good while, but they wouldn't open up. So I went home and made a huge poster from printer paper and sellotape and wrote, "Animal abusers live here, we shoot our neighbors' cats," and taped it across their garage. I guess it worked because later that evening his dad brought the son over to apologize. I don't know if I'd have the balls to do that now. Years ago, my mum broke down in her car and was in a gateway on the side of the road. Nothing to show the gate was used. Next thing, 2 dodgy-looking guys are going mad, waving arms, shouting at us. Turns out it was their entrance. But instead of asking what was going on, the driver went batshit crazy. Ended up having a full-blown punch-up on the side of a very busy road. He almost got the up on me and had me on the floor. But I somehow got him in an armbar and managed to smash his face into the tarmac in the process, just as an off-duty police officer drove past. I actually felt rather proud I got one over on him, 'cause it was a very close fight and I wasn't sure if I was going to lose. He was arrested and done for assault in the end. All the time, my mum was screaming at the other guy to stop it, and he just stood there saying it's not my problem. Forgot to add, the driver was also cautioned for being aggressive to the ambulance that came to treat his mashed face. This was about 15 years ago now. Now I just throw things if I get pissed off. I was teaching my wife to drive and she stalled pulling out of a junction. The car behind beeped its horn, she stalled again. The car keeps beeping as she is starting to get really worked up and upset and keeps stalling it. I am not a man who easily loses his temper, but seeing my wife start to cry as that dickhead kept blasting his horn got me. I jumped out and started kicking the shit out of his door. "Do you not see that ing big red LU?" And continued along those lines for a bit. It bought my wife the time to compose herself, so we pulled out nicely by the time I jumped back in. Work trying to get me to go do a same-day delivery after I finished my run. Lost my shit, told them to fuck off and went home. This was after a 12-hour shift. I've done a few days for a delivery firm. Lines up with the Amazon warehouse I was in during COVID for the worst job I've ever had. At the ghouls that sit outside hospitals shouting at anyone going inside trying to tell them that abortion is murder, etc. I was on my way in to have extra scans to check my baby was developing properly, visibly pregnant, and struggling to walk. One of them did. "Your baby deserves to live, bollocks," and I unleashed 6 months of hormones and stress on him. I hope he dies alone. I'm a really unconfrontational kid, but truly nothing makes me angrier than those people. If I saw them IRL yelling at anyone, let alone a visibly pregnant woman, I might throw something at them. My girlfriend laughed at me when I was crying because my cat had died. I reacted, "Polly." But seriously, I absolutely lost my shit. I am normally a very stoic person, but my friend of 18 years was gone. We did not last much longer, mostly because of the cheating. I punched my gaslighting abusive dad and he reported me to the police. Somehow he got off scot-free with the shit he's pulled whilst I got an interrogation and a warning. When I was 16 or so, my stepdad had just beat my mum up and dragged her across the back garden by her hair, pulled her into the kitchen, and started screaming at her. I was cowering in the living room as standard but finally bubbled over with rage, rushed into the kitchen and screamed at him to shut up. He turned around and took a swing at me and my mum rushed to try and stop him, so he turned back around and knocked her to the ground. I was standing right next to a block of kitchen knives. I did not end up stabbing him, but there was a moment, couldn't tell you how long, where I was truly considering it. It's one of the strangest feelings I've ever felt, like an adrenaline rush and nausea all mixed into one, as I was, for the briefest moment, gearing up to try and kill someone. Instead, at my mum's instruction, I rushed over to a neighbor's house and called the police, which finally got him out of the house. And I just spent the next however long feeling like I was going to throw up. You made the right choice. Ruining your life for his worthless ass wasn't worth it. But I completely understand why you wanted to do it. The last time I was properly angry was my last of 12 days at Amazon. The two shits on the front of this packing machine kept stacking things on top of one another so that by the time they reached myself and the other decent colleague, they'd mixed or fallen through to the floor. I tried asking 2 or 3 times to no avail. I brought it up to one of the supervisors who didn't want to know, so I went back and tried to carry on until I'd ultimately had enough. I hit that emergency stop button so hard it's a wonder it stayed in one piece. Then I went round to the front again where I proceeded to yell at them over the alarm for a good 5 minutes. When I was finished there I spun round and found the supervisor's desk where they were all doing sweet fuck all. Stormed over to it as they all visibly tried to make themselves look small, ripped my lanyard off and then nearly put it through the table and then stormed out. I must have looked like I was about to murder someone because they didn't even stop me to search on the way out. Fuck that place. I've worked at their warehouse and can actually visualize this one in my head. I get so mad sometimes that I could crush a grape. But could you rip a tissue? I'm not proud of this. Walking home late at night, some guy came running at me out of nowhere and threw a punch that missed. I acted defensively on reflex using a method I'd seen discussed on some TV show and stabbed right through one of his eyes with my car key. It completely incapacitated him, lying on ground screaming, and although the advice I'd had suggested giving your attacker a broken leg while they're down, I just departed fast as it occurred to me that I was probably in some sort of legal trouble if I hung around to add further injury. Jesus Christ. If we're talking seeing red moments when you simply lose control, walking to school. Nearly at the gates, this group of 3 kids who had been routinely tormenting me for months were coming towards me. They all smirked and tried to block my path as I approached. I had enough and simply shoved one of them sideways as hard as I could, then kept walking. We were next to a busy road and I suppose I was fucking lucky that he didn't stumble into it and get hit by a car. Seemed to solve the problem though. Mind a few years ago me and the wife were walking through a park, it was summer and lovely day. Some guy was walking his dog. Don't know what happened, dog was sniffing the ground as they do. Next thing I hear an almighty yelp. Turns out the man whacked his dog to get it moving again. Dog was limping. So I walked over, grabbed him by the neck and let rip, not physical, but telling him violently that if he ever puts another hand on a dog or anything else next time won't be so kind. The wee dog was a beautiful black cocker spaniel, not more than a year or so old. Never felt so much anger in my life. I would have taken the dog off him too. I despise people like that, they shouldn't have animals. The one and only time I ever saw red was when I was about 16/17. My younger brother and his friend had been pushed into a river next to a footpath that was near our home. I was at home when they walked through the door, they were soaking wet, covered in mud, cold and clearly shaken. Initially, I thought they'd just fallen in and started laughing, but then they had explained what had happened. I said that I'd take a walk down the footpath and, if they were still there, have a word with them. I asked my brother and his friend to stay at home. I went for a walk down the footpath, with no real plan. However, they were nowhere to be seen. After a while I turned around and started walking back. In the distance I could see my brother and his friend poking the heads around the corner looking down the footpath. As I was walking back towards them, the gaggle of scroats had seen them and were walking out of the bushes towards them laughing and shouting things. I lost my temper and pushed a few around. Did some shouting and stamped through some bicycle wheels and then left them to it. They didn't bother my brother or his friend again, although their older brothers were keen to meet up with me afterwards. Fortunately, that never happened. I worked at a company that had a bonus system based on 6 months goals. I was given 3 goals to hit in 6 months. The day after they were agreed, one goal was cancelled and replaced by another. I asked for this to be reflected in my goals. Agreed. Come the review, I had exceeded all my targets, but my manager said I would not get my bonus because of the cancelled project. When I told him that it wasn't my fault it was cancelled, that I'd taken on another project to replace that and smashed that target, he told me that I had not handed over the cancelled project to anyone. I lost my 5% bonus. He then started to tell me how I could do better next time, at which point I told him to go fuck himself and went to HR. I was only 13, but me and my school friend were walking past a farmer's field and there were 3 lads around 16 to 17 coaxing 2 ponies over to the fence. When they came over, 2 of the lads bricked them and hit one of them in the face. Me and my friend ran over waving our arms to tell them to stop, and I was ready to lay them out even though I was much smaller than them. We knew one of the lads, so my mate told his mom, who told the farmer, who told the pony's owner. The son of the owner turned up at the local pub that weekend and kicked the shit out of the lad's dad, so I guess he got a hiding too when his dad got home. Ha! They deserved it. Sorry to not be adding anything useful to this discussion, but I don't have my glasses with me today. On first pass. To me it read as you punched a dog and then followed up by punching its understandably upset owner. I had another read through, and am very much relieved that it's just my eyesight causing the trouble here. It's so good to know there isn't a dog-harming lunatic who would feel that an angry dog owner who's just seen their dog be punched would be in the wrong if they lashed out. All of that aside, I believe you to be in right. I was once so overwhelmingly angry that I intentionally smashed a cup. Redditors living out their shower fantasies in this thread. You can really tell which ones are just delusions of grandeur, always in defense of an animal or woman against some big burly bloke, despite them being chilled and laid back. Honestly, got pulled over on my bike by the police for bit having a light. Said light had actually been stolen from the bike park at my office that day, so I explained that to him and that I was actually on my way to a shop to buy a replacement before going home. He started lecturing me about the legal status of riding a bike with no lights and that he was going to fine me. He opened the pannier on his motorbike to get the papers he needed, where I saw my bike light. A copper had gone through a business park and stolen lights from people's bikes and then hung out at the exit to find them on their way home. I had my phone in my hand and managed to get a photo of the pannier and his shoulder number. Managed to hold myself back from getting physical, but definitely said a few things that were unwise. Ended up getting his boss out and reporting him, but sadly it never went further than an internal investigation. When I was in year 8 of high school, my brother who was in year 10 got beat up by a bunch of lads in his year. To get my brother to them, the apparent hardest kid in my year said something and then ran so they could get him. At this point in my life I was about 5 stone, anorexic fussy eater, and had never been in a fight. But my blood just boiled and I searched the whole school for him. When I found him in a classroom, I've never to this day seen someone recoil in fear so quickly. He claimed he had nothing to do with it, so I said, I swear if I find out you did I'll kill you. You little ginger cunt, which was overheard by a teacher, which got me in trouble until I explained the situation. Seeing as I was a good kid, and in the top classes, they let me off. Other than that, I'm generally not an angry person. If anyone ever deserved a punch from a stranger, it was that guy. You did well. You only punched them once? Shame. Back in the 80s I had a 50-years-old stepdad who was abusive to my mum, kept cheating on her and treating her like absolute garbage. And also my 15-years-old GF told me he was always saying suggestive things to her when I was in different rooms and tried noncing her up a few times. I was a skinny runt 15-years-old runt who he loved to also bully and put down. Thankfully my mum came to her senses and he got the heave-ho, but 15 years later he appeared at my now happy mum's door while I was back from London for the weekend. I answered the door, he looked shocked. Then I reminded him of those days, remarked on my not so skinny physical condition and the fact I was a bouncer in a tough London nightclub now. Unfortunately when he left he tripped and fell out in the street and became unresponsive. Shocked I jumped on the train and went back to London to summon help. Fortunately he barely survived and had no memory of how he tripped and fell. After the accident he apparently said he had forgotten the location of my mother's house, which was unfortunate as I would have liked to have seen him again. I rarely, if ever, totally lose it, and I'm not proud of watching a 65-years-old man trip and fall in the street, but sometimes karma is a bitch. The lesson here for everyone is if your new GF or wife has teenage boys and you treat her and them badly, you're likely going to be unsteady on your feet in late life.